Okay, VLOOKUPs. This is where we're starting to get to the meat of Excel because VLOOKUPs are used extremely regularly, and it's basically a way of looking up data. Quite often you'll have data in several spreadsheets that you want to combine, or just rearranging data, maybe combining spreadsheets or getting data out of a smaller set of data out of a bigger set of data. Let's just zoom in again. The way to think of VLOOKUPs, it's the same as basically looking as a directory, as the lookup name implies. So, for example, you know one piece of information, like a person's name, but you need to know another piece of information. So you go to your directory, you look up the person's name, move across to find out what the telephone number is. That's exactly what VLOOKUP does. It will look at one piece of information in a table, move certain columns across to find a different bit of information, and return that value. For example, we have got a list of items with their prices. In this box, we want to know what the price of the spice rack is. So this is how VLOOKUP works. VLOOKUP. The value that we want to look up, in this case, it is a spice rack. So we're going to put in spice rack. The next thing it's asking for is the table array. This is essentially the directory for your telephone, the equivalent of the telephone. In this case, this table. One word of caution though, the table array, the first column of that table array needs to contain your data. So in this case, the spice rack is actually in this column. If we selected this, it wouldn't work because it looks for the word spice rack in this column. So we need to choose that set of data. It doesn't matter that the table's bigger than that. What it means is that it will look up values in the first row. But it also has the effect that means you can't look up at any items that are listed before that. So I can only look up items in this direction, not in this direction. So if I wanted to find out what the price of the spice rack is, I could do, but I couldn't find out what the item number was, at least not using this method. So that's once we've selected the table array. Next is the column index number. This is basically how many columns across you want to go. And that includes the first column. So this is the first column and this is the second column. So we want to move to column 2 because that's where the price data is. So we put in 2. The next is range lookup. This is either true or false. In 99.9% of the times, it will be false. So enter false. And it returns the value, 1999. So I could change the word spice rack to scarf. And it goes down this list until it finds the word scarf and then returns the price because it gives 2 columns across 1, 2, 29.99. The other thing you may notice is that it just says $29.99 there, and in here it says $29.99. It only returns the actual value of that cell, not the formatting of that cell. There's actually nothing wrong with you going into that cell and formatting it to a number if you wish, but it won't return the actual formatting, just the actual number. So how do we use that in practice? It's good old Bob the Builder again. This time he's added some more rates. He's got an overtime rate, a standard rate, and now he's got a weekend rate and a weekend overtime rate. So we want to find the total price of the invoice. The way to do that is basically we need to look up that value, what the rate is in that table, and then multiply it by the hours. So let's do that first. So VLOOKUP. So we're looking up this value. Where we're looking it up in this table. What do we want to return? In this case, it is the price. So the price is in the second column because that's the first column. This is the second column, so it's the second column across. And again, it is false. All the true and false means is if it's false, it means you're looking for the exact value. So I'm looking for the exact word standard in this table. So in this case, its overtime rate is 50. But what we need to do is multiply that by the number of hours. So we times that whole equation by the number of hours to give you 200. In fact, just to be, we'll make that £200. Before we drag that down, because if we do drag it down, it isn't going to work. Why isn't it going to work? Because we are referencing a table, and when we move this down, it moves the table down. So we need to anchor this table. So we just anchor the table. So you anchor the top left corner, which is H41, and we're going to anchor the bottom right hand corner, which is I44. So when we move that equation down, it is not moving where we're looking for that information down. So we do it now. Voila. So for example, its overtime rate is £75. It's done 1 hour, so that total amount is 75. Weekend, he's done 7.5 hours at the weekend. At £100 an hour, he's no fool. He's got £750. Again, we can change these values. Maybe he's feeling generous and he wants to do the standard rate at £40. It'll automatically recalculate all the values. And we can, and then just add all that up to get a total invoicing £2,000 for a few hours work. Not bad. Okay, again, similar sort of thing, except we've got two tables here. So what we've got is a first table is a set of destinations where you have the base price of each destination, and then you have the type of holiday in the second table, the type of holiday which has a multiplier effect. So we want to work out, in this case, what is the total price of a budget holiday to Barbados. So the base price is the destination where we're going. So we VLOOKUP. The lookup value is the destination, which is that cell there. Where we're looking it up is in this table here. The column number, again, it is just 2 because we want to find the price, and that's the second column across. 2. And again, this is just false. So Barbados is £532, which is actually what it says on the table, which is good. The multiplier we actually look up in the second table. So VLOOKUP, lookup value, holiday type. Just look at this table. Sorry, second column across and false. So the multiplier is 1. So the total price of the holiday is basically that times that, £532. That's not particularly flexible because it's just one. We have to create it for that specific one. What we could do is then type in another holiday's name, so Paris, and it will recalculate. Or maybe you want a luxury holiday to Paris, going to cost you £825. But what you could also do is type in Manchester, and it comes up with an error because Manchester isn't in that list. So this is where the validation could come in. So again, go to Data, Validation, choose List. Type of holidays we want are basically all the holidays in this list. Click on OK, and then do the same for the holiday types. Data Validation, List. Let's type up multipliers we can get and click on OK. So what you got now is you got a drop down box, so you can easily choose any of the holidays. Say I want to go to Geneva, recalculate it straight away. A hedonistic holiday in Geneva, it's only £705. Bargain. Geneva, just double check that, 235, yeah, no, that works. So you can quickly and easily just alter the data, but only allowing legitimate data to work, and it automatically recalculate it for you. Okay, the next example again is possibly well, it's using real data, and it's mainly to show you don't have to have lookups. In fact, you often don't have lookups in the same sheet. Often you're looking up data in a different sheet, or probably even a different workbook. So again, unhide, we have a VLOOKUP example, and a lot of you probably recognize it is just basically the dar rag. So what we want to do is, in this case, what do we want to do? We want to look up the launch date and the capex number of each of these projects. So for example, launch date is just going to be a VLOOKUP. You could choose the store, or the store number, or the ID. In fact, I would generally avoid using stores, store names, if at all possible, purely because different reports generate, or at least they used to, it's less common nowadays, generate different names for the same store depending on which report is generated. For example, we've probably got an example here, Bursko, formerly Ormskirk. In some reports it may have just been called Ormskirk, so if you look for Ormskirk in that report, it wouldn't find it because it has to match exactly that. Other examples are things like Bolton Horwich. Sometimes it's called Horwich Bolton, sometimes it's just called Horwich, sometimes it's called Bolton Horwich, so it needs to be an exact match for it to find it. So generally store numbers don't tend to change, so we'll just use the store number. Table array is the actual other sheet. So we need to start on store number. Select the table and all the way down, and then column index. So from the store number, which was this one, we want to go over to the launch date. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's the 10th column across. And then just choose false. As you can see here, it comes up with bizarre number. That's not a date. That's because Excel stores dates as numbers. To make it look like a date, you just tell it it is a date, not a general number. So just change that to date, and it will change it to the right date. And I'm sure Wigan's air conditioning project was started on the 2nd of October last year. Let's just double check that. Wigan. Wigan's air conditioning project, 2nd of October last year. So that's pulled out the right data. Okay, one thing to be careful with VLOOKUPs is that it will only look up the very first number that it matches. So for example, the one underneath, which is Rustington, if you look at the store number or the store name, it will only find the groomer's data, and not, if you were looking for the refit or the vets extension, it wouldn't pull those out. It'll only return the first value that it finds. So it'll find the store number 99 and then find the launch date to the 9th of October. In this case, that's not an issue because they're all the same date anyway, but that's not necessarily what would always happen. So just bear that in mind. Okay, the final example is just when we're using that 0.1% of the time where we don't use VLOOKUPs. With the false, we use it looking for the true values. What true value will look for is it won't find the exact match, but what it will do is look for the highest number it comes across that is lower than the value. That probably didn't make much sense, so let me just explain it. So we got Piglet and Friends, Pooh Bear and Friends playing Pooh Sticks. They've all got their own individual scores, and we want to determine how good a score that is. So we've got a table over here that's saying that if you score between 0 and 4, you're a poor. If you're 5 to 9, you could do better. If you're 15 or above, you're tiggerific. So if I wanted to look up 8 on that table, it'll go down that list, it wouldn't find 8, and then it will complain. With the true value, it will find the highest value that is lower than that value. So it would find 5, then it will find 10, but 10 is higher than 8, so it will go back down to this value. So this is the highest number on that table that is lower than the actual value. And then return whichever value you want it to do. So let's just do that. So VLOOKUP, we're looking at value in this table. We're looking up that value comma in this table. column index number is going to be 3 this time because we want the rating, so that's 1, 2, 3. Instead of putting false, you put true, so it's looking for an inexact match. And 8 is greater than 5 but less than 10, so it could do better. Again, before we drag that down, we just need to make sure we're anchoring the table. There we go. So it pulls up that data. Anything bigger than 15 is Tigerific. Simple as. To be honest, I've never ever really used true apart from this very example. I'm sure it is valid. You can use it in valid occasions sometimes, but I've not come across it. But you may, so I included it just for completeness. And that is Vlookup, something that is often is very regularly used in Excel.